Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast, a special edition, actually. Welcome in, Keith. This is our 6th annual question and answer show that we wrap around a beer tasting event. Mm-hmm. And Keith kind of introduced this idea way back in the day when we started this thing, as he has some home brewing attributes that I do not have, wish I had. And so we decided to kind of wrap a show around it, and we've just kind of kept the tradition alive. Yeah, and here we are again.
The first year I brought over a bunch of my homebrew, and we tried that, and we compared one of mine to a manufactured one, an actual brewery one, and but then also had a couple other ones of mine. And since then, getting together for homebrew hasn't really been possible because, you sort of moved out of state. So we instead go out, we pick a style, something, and we go out and we each buy 3 and we review them as we go. And see, this is usually the part of the show where I say how excited I am and how this is going to be a fun show and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to this. I did myself dirty, and I am going to be underneath this desk if I try and consume all of this, because for reasons I'm not sure, I bought 3 high gravity beers, 3 high alcohol beers. I'm in trouble.
They're called Wee Heavy. I didn't do that. I have one that I'm going to do second that's approaches your infant beer that you're going to start with, and then you get heavier after that, and I get a little heavier in my second one and then lighter.
No, see, that would have been smart. I went I knew one of them was high. The other one is one of them is by a brewery, and I've had their Scotch ale, but this is a different Scotch ale. This is their imperial version, you could say. That's like super high sounds alcohol.
Great. Yeah, and my Scotch ale is my highest as well, and it's 9.2 or something like that alcohol per volume. Yep. Last year, if I remember correctly, Keith, we the show kind of went long, and I think we were at like an hour and a half. And we in fact did finish all of our 3 beers, I think, because we were starting to then sip on the beers that we had poured first and stuff, and pretty soon we were pretty close to being out. So we'll see how we do today. We'll see.
So what are you drinking first?
All right. So what I'm drinking first. So this is the way it's going to go. So we're gonna sample these beers. We're going to talk about the beers a little bit. We've got some questions and answers for each other, and we're going to kind of go back and forth on that. It's just going to be a fun show. Some of it's going to be football related. Some of it's not. Okay. I am drinking a street side brewery based in Cincinnati, Ohio. They call it a Sofa King India Red Ale. And I'll hold this up to the camera, and you can see the kind of Smurf looking dude down on the bottom there. And he's the Sofa King. And it's an India Red Ale. I'll read you what they have to say about it. The recipe originated from a home brew and was inspired by a fateful trip to Bend, Oregon. They don't say exactly what happened there, but this beer has been tweaked about a zillion times to make the beer that you have before you. Brewed with the best malts, Red X, and is hopped heavily with Citra and Mosaic to give it a citrusy berry aroma. And this is kind of what it looks like. And to me, being kind of a red ale guy in general, this is beautiful. This is just gorgeous. So let me sip it. I'll give you the report.
So I went with a very well-known beverage for my first one. It is Arrogant Bastard by Stone Brewing in Escondido, California, which is a suburb of San Diego. And it is known for being, it is not as dark as the camera makes it look. It's got a red color to it. It is, got that ale look, but it's hopped heavy. It's got a lot of alcohol. It's one of my absolute favorites of all time.
Nice.
And
this is my first time drinking this one, and the next one we're going to drink, for me, I haven't had before, but I know about it. And then the third one, it's been about 12 or 13 years since I've had it, and when I saw it, I had to get it because and I'll talk about it later. But so this one's a little bitter. It's a little fruity, and it's got some notes of like smoke a little bit, and you can taste the hops and the amber caramel kind of flavor a little bit, and it ends with just a little bitter note at the end, which I'm not completely fond of, but it's pretty nice, especially with as cold as I've got it. I frosted my glasses, all that kind of stuff, kept them on ice, and so it's really refreshing, actually.
yeah, this is it's high hopped. It's got kind of that citrus bitterness without the citrus flavor. You can taste the alcohol in it, and but the malt comes through first, and then it finishes all hops, and so it takes a few sips in order to get your tongue to calm down, and then it's good.
Nice.
All right,
okay,
let's get into some questions. Why don't you lead us off?
Yeah. Okay. So my first question, and these are in no particular order, but I'm just going to read them in the order that I just wrote them down.
Okay.
And I asked for questions from everybody, and I didn't get a lot of help there, so most of these are going to be mine. Out of the 22 favored starters on this team, who is ranked last in terms of actual talent and would have the hardest time starting for any other team?
Okay.
There's an easy answer and there's a harder answer.
There's an easy answer, and that's probably what I'm going to go with. And that's going to be Geno Smith at quarterback.
The least talented.
Yes.
Actual talent. See, now I would disagree with you there, but go ahead, explain yourself to me. Why would you say that?
You said has the hardest time starting for any other team. He is, out of 32 starting quarterbacks, he is either somewhere between 30 and 32 in terms of talent and ability, and putting him, that's the answer to your question.
I guess that isn't, because it is kind of a twofold question a little bit. Yeah. So that definitely would qualify for the hardest time starting for any other team. I think that he might start for two other teams, maybe.
But I think they would probably go with a younger player just because there's upside. Even if they're slightly worse, he would be younger and therefore more likely to develop into something usable. So you said there's another answer.
Well, it's complicated. It's complicated for me, and I thought you might go the nuanced route here, with an answer and say, well, in general, quarterbacks, an NFL quarterback, one of 32, is a pretty talented football player. I mean, those guys are generally pretty darn talented, even ranked 32 out of 32 players. Those guys are still like premier athletes. They usually are well versed in the game, just like hundreds of thousands of throws, over their lifetime so far, and all that kind of stuff. They're just, I would consider them some of the most talented players on the team. But you're right, as far as starting, he's definitely in that category. I would have gone, I did in my mind think Austin Blythe, the center, just because of when I looked at everyone else on the roster as far as the starters are concerned, I think that he's the least talented football player that's going to start.
I don't
Now,
know.
as far
This
as
will be the
starting with
second.
another team, I think that he could
This will be
probably
the
end up
second
starting
team
with.
that he started with, right?
Yeah, true,
So,
true. But yeah, I think you probably had the right answer.
so I was going to go the cop out answer, which wasn't quarterback, which it would have been Nick Ballore at fullback.
That's a
Because he's not a
trick. That's a
fullback.
trick answer.
It's a trick answer because he's a special teams player. They list as fullback. He plays probably 20 snaps at fullback a year. He's more likely to play snaps at linebacker than at fullback. So yeah, it's not a real answer, but possible.
All right. What's your first question?
Of all the rookies, which one are you most excited about?
That's an interesting question. I'm going to go with Charles Cross. Really. I'm excited that we've found our left tackle of the future. We've been talking about it for a couple of years now. Dwayne Brown has been great, but it's been obvious that we were going to need to replace him. We didn't really do that last year. We drafted Stone Forsythe late in the draft, and he really kind of didn't seem like the long-term answer. We just didn't quite know. And we entered this year. We knew that Dwayne Brown was probably exiting or at least getting real close, maybe a 1-year deal to come back or something. And then the Russell Wilson trade happened. And then we ended up getting a pick, in the top 10. And we used it on the smartest pick that we probably could have used it on in drafting Charles Cross. And I know that people really aren't excited about it yet because they haven't seen him. They haven't seen the kid play and move his feet and pass block and just kind of be that big, huge mammoth guy there at left tackle. But he's going to be, and he's going to play. And I'm kind of excited about him coming in and really showing us what he's got and locking down that spot for years to come.
See, that's not who I thought you were going to say, because offensive line is usually not exciting.
It's you've warmed me up over 6 years, I have to say.
It's taken time. It's been put a lot of work into.
Did you think I was going to say Ken Walker?
No. Although I probably should have. I thought you were going to say Boye Mafe, pass rusher.
Well, there's another kid that's exciting. Now that you talk about exciting, I mean,
yeah.
That's
who I thought you were going to say, because it's a pass rusher with a lot of talent. He's going to be fun to watch. And so, as far as exciting, that's where I thought you'd go.
It's interesting, Keith, because players like that, yes, they are exciting, but man, it seems like they take a little time to get acclimated to the NFL. And so I'm not sure if he's got excitement ready to go out of the gate, as far as making plays, stripping players of the football, causing, forced fumbles, getting a few sacks early in the season and so forth. I just like to temper my expectations a little bit. And that's really, when I first thought of the answer immediately, I was thinking about going that way. And then I was like, I'm going to temper that a little bit. I'm going to go with the steady but sure starter here, guy that's not exciting, quote unquote, but I'm excited about seeing that player. How about you?
For me, I mean, I have the same answer you have with being Cross, because I'm a guy who likes to watch offensive linemen block, and I know that I'm rare. And so I'm actually excited to see someone with his talent, just pure athletic talent, come in and learn the position, because we haven't seen that. Dwayne Brown's was really good, but even he in his prime didn't move his feet as well as Charles Cross can. And that's why I'm excited. I like watching guys like him play. Yeah. And I know it's going to be ugly at times this year, because he's got a lot of learning to do coming out of the offense that he was coming out of. But the talent is there. He has talent to be one of the top, 5 tackles in the entire NFL.
He's got to be really interesting.
Got some skill to learn to get there, but he has the talent to do that.
It'll be really interesting also to watch Abe Lucas on the other side. This is a kid that has, I think, equal potential to kind of catch Charles Cross as being that talented and that effective on the offensive line, especially as a pass blocker coming out of the gate. So I'm just very curious about that competition over on the right side. I know that the team probably prefer Abe Lucas to win that battle. If it's close, I think that that's what they end up doing, is just go ahead and putting him out there right out of the gate, see what happens.
Yeah, and at least, just giving them snaps to get acclimated to the NFL, get all of that rookie learning done, as soon as possible for those kids. I don't expect Abe Lucas to start week 1. I expect Jake Curran to, because you can't have both of your tackles learning how to run block. You need at least some player out there that can road great and get you 3 yards when you need it.
It's
And
kind of the same logic with Geno Smith and Drew Lock, though. If you kind of think about it, the team, especially, did you see the comments that KJ Wright made yesterday on the radio?
no,
He basically said, listen, here's the deal. Drew Lock's not going to be the quarterback of this team right out of the gate. It's going to be Geno Smith. He says, I know the coaching staff. I know what they're thinking. All the players stand behind Geno Smith. They love him. It's going to be Geno Smith. And I was like, wow. I mean, that was really pretty definitive when he came out and said it, as if he had the inside information, like he played with the team for 10 years. And that made me think that yeah, maybe Geno is going to roll out, and we'll see where we're at after 4 or 5 games. I don't know that there's necessarily going to be a quarterback controversy, but the same thing kind of applies over there at right tackle. You're going to have the guy that's been there. He didn't look bad last year playing those 5 games. In fact, he looked pretty decent, especially towards the end of the year in the last couple of games. And it's going to take a little bit for Abe Lucas to kind of overcome that. He knows the offense really well. He's strong. He's capable. I think if Jake Curran just comes out and just plays as steady as he played at the end of last year, he's probably got that job. But I think that the team looks at the upside of Lucas and just can't get over that part of it, though.
Oh yeah, that's why they drafted him. He was the guy that you and I were talking about as, if you miss out on the offensive tackles early in the draft because things don't fall right and whatever, he's the guy that you could get in the 3rd round.
Yes,
Play
and
him at right
possibly start him.
tackle.
Yeah,
Play him at right tackle for a year to get used to the NFL, then move him to the left because he's got the talent to play over there. And so yeah, I mean, there's potential for them to have 2 franchise left tackle quality tackles on the team at the same time. That would be just crazy. But yeah,
that would be crazy. All right, second question for you. Current team uniforms, Keith, and helmets or throwback unis?
Throwback. Go back to.
Is it a nostalgia thing for you, or do you think that they'd actually look better and it would be kind of a cool thing?
I like the current logo, but the old uniforms, I want them to go back to the Dave Craig, Steve Largent era, not the Mike Holmgren metallic blue.
The gray pants with the little blue stripe and the white uniforms with the blue letters and etc.
Yeah, that's the look. I mean, it's the look that I grew up watching.
And the colors.
Right? Mm-hmm. Well, I don't mind the colors that they have now.
But then it wouldn't be really retro. I mean, you really couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I don't mind them. I did mind the metallic blue of the Mike Holmgren era. That was not a great look for the Seahawks. The old school look, I'm all for. I like the colors, but not the design of the current uniforms.
Mm-hmm. So you need a hybrid.
You need that neon green color, whatever it is for Thursday night football, needs to burn in hell because it's just awful.
It's a nice little accent, but that's about it.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be the entire uniform.
It's pretty blinding. It's like Boise State's football field in blue. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. What you got?
Okay. If you were in control, what's the first rule that you would change or make?
That's a good question. I think that I would make all pass interference calls 10 yards. And the reason being is I just don't like the idea of the pass interference being 40 yards downfield or whatever and giving them the entire amount. I just think that's overstated a little much, and so I would rein that back in a little bit. Now I realize that again helps the offense just a little bit more, but I just don't like those big long penalties where teams kind of take advantage of that, um, especially towards the end of games where they're just basically trying to stretch it out and get those penalties. I don't know. It just seems weird to me.
I agree. They've gone to it's so easy to get a pass interference call now because the defenders aren't allowed to touch the receivers for the most part. And so you see a lot more of those calls. I mean, the rule was set up so that way, you're beat, you just tackle him
Right.
rather than letting him have the catch. And so the rule is set up to prevent that and make the receiver actually make the catch.
Yeah.
But
I do
it,
like establishing rules though to help the defense a little bit more because it's gotten lopsided. I just don't know
mhm.
what to do because there's safety issues now at hand that and then and targeting and roughing the passer that seems really squishy. Like some referee squads really enforce that, and you can almost just blow the guy down, you know, right after he releases the ball, and you're going to get a flag. Other times, guys are allowed to shove a guy and have the quarterback tumble back, and there's no call. So there's a lot of inconsistency in the NFL when it comes to penalties, and I don't know what to do about it. But I'd like to see that cleaned up a little bit. I don't like point of emphasis type things at the beginning of the year either,
Mhm.
where they've had these meetings in the off season. Okay, we're going to enforce holding, and then you go through the first 5 or 6 games of the year, and every single little tacky hold on the offensive line is called and stuff. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just
having a whole bunch of penalties uh is not the way to make the game better. Right? You get you all the stoppages of play, all the penalties, you see way too much of the refs. Um I agree. I don't like the point of emphasis rules. They always end up being a big drag on everything.
yeah, yeah. All right, question for you. I'm going to come back to a couple of these here. What's your best division in football, Keith?
The best division in football right now is the AFC West.
So the NFC West was the best division in football last year. Now it's
Mhm.
the AFC West. And is,
Yeah.
is that just because Russell Wilson moved over there?
No. It's because Russell Wilson moved over there, Devontae Adams moved over there, um, Khalil Mack and a whole bunch of defensive players went to the Chargers. Um, that division loaded up on talent. Yes, Kansas City lost Tyreek Hill, but they added Juju Smith Schuster and some other guys to try and make up for that, and some defensive players, and they're a much more balanced team now.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, I
And they
mean
had a great draft.
those are 4 teams that are all playoff
Yeah,
worthy
Randy
rosters.
Gregory ended up going to the Broncos. You had Chandler Jones going to the what was it
To the Raiders.
to the Raiders, the Devontae Adams. Then you've got the Chargers that are all loaded up. I mean, you're right. Yeah, that's the clear one. I mean, that was a gimme question, but I thought Seahawks fans would be interested in that.
So
Um,
the follow up question is that what's the second best division? Because I thought that was the easy one, but actually going through the divisions and figuring out, okay, well, other than the AFC West, what's the second best division right now?
hmm, I really like this Cincinnati Cleveland division. Um, if whatchamacallit can play football,
Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, because in that division, you've also got Baltimore,
Yeah, Baltimore. Right. Yeah. Right. Right.
and
Right.
and then
And
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh's you know,
Not
re
quite right.
they're trying to figure out what they're going to do at quarterback and retool the roster a little bit there. But I don't know if they even take a step back because Roethlisberger was so bad last year um, that they may actually be competent without him. So, yeah, that's a good answer.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably other ones. Let me see. I would say AFC East is getting pretty good. Um, That's really it. I mean, the NFC West is still probably the second best roster, second best division, I think, overall. There's a couple there, but you still got the Cardinals that are going to win 10 games. The Rams are going to win 11, maybe 12. 49ers are going to be possibly another 10 win team. I mean, it's you could have 3 teams with 10 wins in one division. I still think that the West, even though it's diminished, is a really decent division overall. And I don't know what the Seahawks are going to do. We need to have that show at some point, the prediction show in September. But I think I need until September to kind of figure out the Seahawks. I need to see that quarterback competition in training camp to find out how I feel about the team. I think the rest of the roster is pretty decent, but it'll be interesting.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Yeah, go ahead with another one.
Would you change the overtime rules? And if so, how?
I don't care. To me, it's a coin flip. It's just one of those things. Did they change it a little bit? Did they put a new rule in this off season, or it's still the same as last year?
In the playoffs, both teams will get a possession.
Okay. So yeah, they'll test that and we'll see. I think both teams kind of probably deserve to have a possession. But I do kind of like the idea that you put it, if you lose the toss, you put it on your defense. They need to make a stop. If you don't make a stop and you allow a touchdown, maybe the game should be over. I mean, you can have overtime go, on and on and on. And sometimes sudden death is just sudden death. It just needs to stop. It seems to have worked. I mean, there's been peripheral complaints overall, but I think generally speaking, it seems like the team that's meant to win wins.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think they're the team that wins the toss wins the game way too high of a percentage.
Then get a good coin toss guy. I mean, well, what are you going to do? It's like you got to. I think the coin toss is the obvious thing to do. That seems fair. It's a 50-50 chance. There's nothing fairer than that. Now, after that happens, what do you do to quicken games? Maybe you only get 5 minutes. Maybe you get instead of having a 15-minute quarter or 10-minute quarter, whatever it is, you have 5 minutes. Each team has 5 minutes. And in 5 minutes, you got to march down and you got to score. And then the other team gets 5 minutes. And whichever team, and just keep doing it in 5-minute increments until a team doesn't score. What else would you do? I mean, otherwise it would just go on and on and on.
I like the change that they made because during the regular season, I don't care. I want games to end. And I'm not one of those people who hates ties during the regular season. If no team can score in 10 minutes of game time at the end of the game or after the end of the game, wrap it up, go home. During the playoffs, so you can't do that. And what you end up with is situations like last year with the Buffalo Kansas City game, which was just a phenomenal game to watch. But you knew at the end of that game, whoever won the coin toss won the game because both defenses were so gassed. Neither defense was getting a stop. It was absolutely impossible for either of those defenses to get a stop. Whoever won the coin toss won the game. And Kansas City happened to win the coin toss, so they won the game. And I think that is a crummy way for a season like Buffalo's with a team and a roster like that to get eliminated. They got eliminated from the playoffs because they lost a coin flip.
They got eliminated from the playoffs because their defense didn't make a stop.
Yeah, but the thing is that your Kansas City's defense couldn't have made that stop either.
Well, that's when you need to rise up. I mean, that's why we have team football. But then the entire team you're looking at, you're only having one possession. The virtue of losing the coin toss. So by losing the coin toss, which is a 50-50 proposition,
it's not
you had to have your defense.
It's a 50-50 proposition as far as which team wins. But whoever wins the coin toss wins 8 out of 10 games.
So
you're letting a coin toss.
Somebody needs to be a better coin toss guy. I'm back to that. I don't know what else to say. I mean, at some point you have to stop. You just have to say, these are the rules. Every team has the same exact rules, and you have to play the game.
And
And so that
I
you
don't
just have
think
to
I
play
don't
the
think a
card
point.
that,
I
like
don't
Chuck
think when
Knox
you
said,
get
you
in
have to play the cards that are dealt you.
when you get to the playoffs, you're trying to get the best team out, not the team that wins coin
So
tosses.
now what are the rules for the playoffs?
So in the playoffs, both teams get a possession.
And then what?
And then the next team scores.
The next team that scores, or
Yeah.
the team that scores a
Nope, next team
field
that
goal or
scores
touchdown. Okay,
becomes sudden death.
cool.
So
All right,
if
Keith.
you're that situation and you're Buffalo, you give up that touchdown, you get the ball back, you go down and score a touchdown because Kansas City wasn't stopping you, and then you're in a position. Do you go for 2? And you let that decision, where it becomes a play of players versus players, not a coin flip, that decides who wins the game. Because because at that point, you make the 2-point conversion, you win. If you don't make it, you lose. And that's the game. Let the players decide it. That's my point.
All right. So
Go ahead.
we got to move on to pint number 2.
All right. So what are you drinking now?
Well, I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to go the heavier one out of the 2 that I have remaining, because I was wanting to finish with a certain one. I'm going with McEwen's Scotch Ale / Wee Heavy. Eagle Brewing, previously the Caledonian Brewery in England, United Kingdom. Yeah. And it's 8. It's only 8%.
Only.
Wee Heavy.
That's your strongest one is 8%.
Yeah, I know, Keith. I know.
Arrogant Bastard was 8.2.
Tease the old man. I get it.
No, I did this to myself. This is not a good move. Right now I am drinking the New Belgian Triple, spelled EL instead of LE. It is 8.6%. Let me go ahead and pour this. It is much lighter than.
Oh wow, I'm pouring this pretty hot and heavy, and there's literally no head on this. That's the way it went in, and I poured it pretty quick. So
check this color out.
Oh, is that an ale?
It is.
What is that called? What is that? What style?
It's a Belgian Triple. It's a Belgian style ale. So it's
now isn't like a Chimay like a Belgian style ale, and isn't that a little bit more amber color?
Yeah.
Like, weren't we doing an amber and red show today, Keith?
This is, the camera doesn't pick up the color well.
It is amber.
This is amber. It's got that color. This is not the beer that I wanted. It's the beer that they had. What I wanted was a Vienna lager, which has about the same color, maybe a little darker. It's hopped differently. It uses completely different yeast because Belgian styles use much more aggressive wild yeast like type strains. And whereas Viennas are much smoother, more malt forward.
So I have to read off of a script because I'm not as well versed as you are, Keith, in the beer knowledge. This is a Scotland-inspired Scottish ale, Wee Heavy, 8% alcohol units. Here's a classic Wee Heavy that pours a dark brown color with a big malty, fruity nose. Coffee and roasted malt flavors dominate with little hop presence. The residual sugar provides a dose of sweetness, and it's rather dark. Looks about like a root beer, basically.
So it's almost a porter. Scotch ale should be, well, it should be dark but red, like my first.
I can taste the sweetness. It is about the same color. It is a little. It's got a little. It's hard to say. Well, there you go, a little bit. It's good. It's completely different than the India Red Ale that I first had. It is almost kind of got that stouty kind of in between. Yeah, interesting. Fun. All right, next question for you. What's your off-season move of the year for the Seattle Seahawks?
Drafting Charles Cross. Now,
wow,
that move
answer was quick.
That was an easy one. That move doesn't happen if they don't trade Russell Wilson, because otherwise they don't have um, the draft capital to do that.
So I was thinking that your move of the year, regardless of the situation, was the trade of Russell Wilson, because um, I know that that can be viewed negatively, um, or positively, but mostly negative for Seahawk fans. They didn't
Hmm.
want to move along from Russell Wilson, but I think as time has gone on since he's left, I think everyone realizes that a new contract with Russell wasn't attainable, and a decision needed to be made this offseason with regards to compensation available for Russ. Now, you could have argued that Russ could have played one more year without an extension, and his draft or his tradable asset value could have been similar next offseason. But they would have delayed this whole restructure thing another year, having had to go out and piecemeal a roster together, kind of in win now mode. And
They've been doing that
yeah,
for years, and
but
it
anyway,
hasn't been working.
the Charles Cross thing is a very consequential move, and a right move by the franchise to draft him in the first round there. So I can totally see that.
Yeah, I mean, they went and got a franchise left tackle, which they've needed, who's a young player that they can build their offensive line around. They can cater their scheme to his talents. Um, this has been a move that's been 10 years too late. Okay,
What
maybe
if,
not quite that far. Ever since Russell Okung left,
yeah,
this is a move that's needed to be made. They needed to go draft a franchise left
and
tackle,
they were
and
just
they haven't.
drafting late in the first round. I mean, they could have taken some stabs at a couple of players, but the other move that you may have considered would be getting rid of Ken Norton Jr. and hiring Clint Hurtt as the
Yes,
defensive coordinator. I mean,
getting rid
that
of
changes the trajectory of
the
the
defense.
entire
Yeah,
defense.
yeah. Getting rid of Ken Norton Jr. Is huge, because he was not using players to the best of their talent. He wasn't putting them in position to use their talent as he should be. He was trying to force a lot of square pegs into round holes, and it clearly wasn't working. What this team needs is new minds, someone who innovates, someone who will do what Pete Carroll did when he first arrived, and that is look for unique traits in individual players and then figure out how to leverage those unique traits.
And put them in the best position
Exactly.
possible to succeed.
And Ken Norton Jr. was incapable of doing that.
Seemingly incapable across the board at multiple positions, which was just the oddest thing that you and I, could and a lot of other people, to be completely honest, just sat back week after week diagnosing what was going on, what was wrong, and the team itself couldn't figure it out. And that was just really frustrating. All right, Keith, you're up.
Who was the most recent Seahawks player whose name you've screamed at the TV?
Wow. That's going to be hard for me because I don't scream at the TV. I try not to get upset at football games anymore. There may have been a time, in the past.
You don't have to get upset. It could be an excitement.
Or excitement. Oh yeah. Well, I can tell you in person, when Rashad Penny had that, 65-yard scamper in the second half of that Arizona Cardinal game. I was at that game.
You were at that game.
I was at that game, and he was coming at me into my end zone. And yeah, dude, talk about a school kid, junior high kid, screaming and yelling like we were going to the playoffs. I was that guy. Yeah, that was the last time. Yeah,
that was who I thought you'd say is Penny, because some of those runs he had at the end of the year were just fantastic.
And that run in particular was just crazy. Yeah. I mean, he had a couple of cutbacks in that thing and was gone, and nobody was going to touch him, and so he was clear for about 40 yards of that, and it was a delight to watch him. It was like Percy Harvin, in the return in the Super Bowl, where he made that last cut, and then he had about 40 yards to run, and his own players were kind of shielding him, running with him all the way down to the end zone. That's kind of what it was like. It was fun. Yeah.
So, similarly to that play you're talking about, the 65-yard run, when they used to play in Tempe before the Glendale Stadium was built, I went to a game there where the Seahawks played Arizona, and Sean Alexander ripped off like a 96-yard run. And he ripped it off from, because we were on the, we weren't in the end zone, we were on the side, but we were down near one of the end zones. So it was that play was starting kind of in front of me, and then it just disappeared down to the other end of the field for 96 yards. And it was just like,
that's pure pandemonium when that happens.
Especially in a opposing stadium, because it can be interesting when you're on the road team.
It used to be interesting in Arizona, and now the Seahawks travel well, and there's probably 12,000 Seahawk fans in that stadium.
It was like that when I was there when I was there in Tempe. There was a lot of blue shirts, and by the end of the game, or by midway through the fourth quarter, it was mostly blue shirts.
Yeah, interesting.
The Arizona fans had left, so of course they were really bad that year.
All right, I've got a screwball question for you that's going to throw you.
All right,
maybe. As it relates to quantum physics, is consciousness fundamental? Is consciousness a fundamental quality of the universe? And if not, Keith, how do you explain entanglement theory?
So quantum entanglement and consciousness, I don't believe, are related. Quantum entanglement is basically when you have two different particles that if you change the state of one, it automatically changes the state of the other. And
regardless of distance,
regardless of location and distance, because they're entangled. I don't understand why that would be tied to consciousness or the neural network of how the brain works, because that is on a much larger scale than quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is looking at
because you need consciousness to be able to observe the entanglement.
Yeah.
And without consciousness,
but that doesn't mean
you wouldn't be able to observe it, and therefore it may not happen.
But the entanglement could still exist. You just aren't smart enough to see it.
That's now that you can say that about a lot of different things. It may still exist, but if consciousness is fundamental, that would mean that consciousness needs to happen in order for anything to happen, to anything to exist, to us to perceive reality itself.
Sure, but so you're going to look at it from that way, but that doesn't mean you can turn that statement around and say that it's quantum entanglement and other quantum mechanical properties that cause consciousness. Like the stuff that works, the way the brain works and all of that, it's on a much larger scale. Your quantum effects, you're going to get up to the size of a subatomic particle. Anything larger, and you're not really looking at quantum mechanics anymore.
True.
You can at some atom level stuff, but mostly not. When you start looking at individual cells, like a neuron, which is billions and billions and billions of atoms, no, you're not looking at quantum mechanics anymore, because the little tiny changes and stuff that happen in that realm aren't big enough to make anything happen on a scale the size of a neuron.
Do you think that there will be a theory of everything in your lifetime?
No.
Do you think it's possible? Do you think it exists?
And
we're talking about marrying conventional mechanics with quantum mechanics now. But I'm just letting everyone else know.
The thing is that quantum mechanics and relativity can't both exist at the same time, and that really screws things up.
But they do exist at the same time, just not in the same space. Possibly.
Yeah. So trying to come up with a way that you can marry two things that are mutually exclusive becomes challenging. And there's been a couple attempts. Loop quantum gravity is one, string theory is another, both of which have fallen apart in recent years. And the mathematics required to try and pretend that they're doing what you want them to do requires basically that you have multiple dimensions, and that you have a fourth, fifth, sixth, eighth, 244th dimension,
Yeah.
not just
And
the three that
multiple
we're used to in
universes,
time.
and yeah.
And you have to be storing energy someplace else. But then if that was true, wouldn't those other universes ever be storing energy in ours? And there's no evidence that that's ever happened. So
Black holes.
but no, because we can explain black holes and
Yeah, but that's where
everything.
the energy might be stored.
Yeah. It just comes down to those are things that are untestable. And the only reason why we know their names is because they thought the math worked, and then it turned out the math didn't work.
So Wolfram has kind of come up with some interesting ideas about causal graphs and a whole bunch of other stuff that's pretty interesting. I don't know if you're familiar, but he would be somebody that I would look at. And I've spent a little bit of time listening to some podcasts and all that kind of stuff. It's fascinating to me, but it's way over my. It's like I need to listen to, those sorts of shows like 2 or 3 times to kind of pick up 10% of the information provided. But fun conversation anyway. The reason I asked that question is because Keith is our resident physicist.
Yeah, I have a physics degree. So every time we do this, you try and stump me with one of those questions.
No, I'm not trying to stump you. I'm trying to learn and educate our audience as well. Okay, go ahead.
Which NFL team has the most annoying fans on Twitter?
That would be San Francisco 49ers.
By a mile.
And
it's not even
and
close.
I don't even go there. I really don't. I'm pretty well protected from that kind of crap, but it's not even close.
Yeah. Which is interesting because if you look at in baseball, it's Boston. Boston fans are terrible. They're the ones that show up to the games drunk before they get there.
I've been to Boston and
then spend their time is cussing at little kids.
I will say on the way to the stadium, the Boston fans are amazing. They love you. They want you to have a great time. They help you walk to the stadium from 2 miles away, and it's all fun and dandy. And then you get to the game, and it's like it's chaos. It's hectic. Yeah. Think about this question before you answer immediately.
Uh-oh.
What is your favorite tool? And a tool is a broad definition tool.
My favorite tool. That is so broad because so many different things are tools in the way that we use them. I would have to say it's the computer that I'm talking at right now.
I totally predicted that. But yes. Now why?
Well, without it, we wouldn't have the show. And well, the show is important to me. But no, it comes down to it's my lifeline as far as doing stuff. Everything that I do for work, I do on the computer. Everything that everything, all these different things that I need, I could do on my computer. It's always like, ooh, go to this website if you need this. And a lot of places you can't call anymore. You have to sign up online and that kind of stuff. And I found that despite all of the improvements, my my iPhone still doesn't give me the same level of control over what I'm doing because so many companies have put out mobile versions of their site that are limited in they don't do everything that the desktop version does. So I'm still one of those people that uses my laptop more than my cell phone. I know I'm old, whatever.
Yeah, no, I'm taking a trip to Europe soon. And the one tool that I'm taking, I'm taking my phone as well, but I'm taking a laptop just because I need to be connected to a certain extent. That's a great answer. It's the obvious answer, I think. If you spend any time thinking about it, because you could narrow that down. You could say, well, this is my favorite app, and this is why. This is what it does. Makes my life easier, etc. But if you were a craftsman, or if you were a carpenter, or if you were a chef, maybe your favorite tool is a utensil of some sort, or a cooking pan, or the oven, or whatever. Yeah, all sorts of fascinating answers could be possible, and you could have legitimate answers based on your lifestyle, or where you live, or if you live in the outback somewhere, or don't have access to technology, or you're a tribe person in the Amazon that is one of those tribes that hasn't been discovered yet, or is isolated on purpose because the government mandates that they be left alone. That your favorite tool there, who knows? I don't know. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So in February of 2025, right? It's two seasons from now. The Seahawks are playing in the Super Bowl. Who do you want to be the halftime show?
Jeez. I want an all-star version of the Foo Fighters. Talk about an all-American party band on steroids. Like Dave Grohl is one of my favorite guys, one of my favorite musicians, one of my favorite bands. Not because I love every song that they do. It's because of the way that they bring it every single night. And they are just a consummate professional band who the energy level is just off the charts. When Taylor Hawkins passed away, their drummer, I was pretty sad and upset about that. I was fortunate enough to see them a couple times in concert. And, I hope they find a way to kind of still play music going forward. But yeah, that would be fun. To me, it's a fun thing. Now, and everyone, from a different generation or whatever has all sorts of music that they love and care about. For me, it's just the energy thing. I think it would be fun. It would be energetic. The crowd would kind of go crazy. But all sorts of different music is available. And to be completely honest, most half times I'm usually barbecuing something, and that's when I'm like tending to the meat.
Yeah, most of the halftime shows have been especially especially the last couple. Coldplay was terrible.
Yeah, that's a sleeper. I don't know why you would choose that band.
And The Weeknd, which I get that there was a lot of COVID restrictions, and so that's why, but they ended up with the selfie stick in a hallway full of lights, and I'm like, this is just bad. And then this last one actually with Snoop wasn't bad. Like that was like return to the 80s in terms of hip hop, and that one was fun. But
I like it. I'm an old school dude. I am. Look at me. So I like old school rock and roll. I mean, just go out there and like put on a show. And Aerosmith, or some of those bands are just bigger than life. They go out and have this great stage presence, and has a bank full of hits that they can go out and roll out. Tom Petty, I think, did it one year, and I love that. I think Foo Fighters would be great. There's just for me, it's the energy thing. Like the Coldplay thing just doesn't make any sense at all. Regardless of genre or whatever band you're going to put out there, man, make sure you bring it. Like turn it up on 11 and go have fun, and let everybody like dance and sing along and like groove to it. And yeah. How about you?
The Foo Fighters was actually when I was writing that question, who I thought of and who I thought you probably would say. So I was trying to think of other bands, and I ended up going in a direction that I wasn't expecting, because I was thinking the same thing. Like, it doesn't have to be current, and it doesn't have to be the best musicians. Give me the best show. And so I was thinking Metallica, or Aerosmith. Some of these older bands that
right.
they still tour because
they're
people go see them, and they're showmen.
Yes.
And even if they're musically they're not what they used to be, they're still showmen. That I think would be fun.
Even like it wouldn't be necessarily my thing, but like a Katy Perry. Like I know that she's like in residency in Las Vegas, and she has this bigger than life stage thing going on with all that kind of stuff.
She did a halftime show a few years ago.
Yeah, something like that, or Beyonce, or, Adele would be amazing.
Just
You know,
musically, that would be
just
crazy.
musically, that would be just crazy. I'm sure that would be like a stunning presentation. So something like that would be cool.
See, my wife here would say Taylor Swift
Yeah, that
because
would be
has
fantastic.
has
She's an
all of
all-American
the
girl. Yeah.
stage performance and all of that, the huge bank of hits, all of that.
Yeah.
It'll never happen though, because the NFL and her, one has Coke sponsorship, the other one has Pepsi sponsorship.
That's funny. Yeah, her and like Carrie Underwood just belting it out together. I mean, something like that would be fun. All right. Which American city, Keith, most deserves to have the next NFL franchise?
Ooh. Wow, that's a good question.
And we're going, and by the way, while he's thinking about this, we're going long. It's okay. Put it on pause, come back to it tomorrow. We don't care. We don't care about this show. Like, listen, don't listen, have fun, turn it off,
Yeah,
share it
this is
with your
just for
friends.
fun.
This is for us. But thanks for staying with us. If you've been with us this long, we'll probably go another half hour. So this is your intermission. Go to the bathroom, get up, get something to eat, bring it back, sit down. Okay.
Honestly, that was a harder question than I just kept like coming back to San Diego. That I know there was a lot of problems with Spanos and the way that the team left, but it was also one of those wells that was highly poisoned by the owner. So the whole, oh, we can't get a stadium. Oh yeah, but you made sure you didn't get a stadium type situation. I would love to have seen San Diego be able to keep the Chargers. That was a really good fan base. I get that it's small. It's not the greatest market in terms of city size and all of that, but they were passionate fans and they deserved better.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I do not personally like it when something's awarded to somebody for some reason in the past and all of a sudden it's taken away or moved. We saw that almost happen in Seattle. I empathize with that situation. We we saw that with the Sonics. When franchises go through that, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare for people because there's a lot of fans out there that attach their entire life to being a fan and to supporting a team and having season tickets, and it's just part of what families do together. And to have that taken away is rough. So that's a good answer. I don't have another answer. I just was really curious about what you might say.
Yeah, I was just like
That's a good choice.
looking over. It's hard because you start looking at bigger cities that either have one or there's one that's close to them, right? The Bay Area has the 49ers, even if they're in Santa Clara. And yes, they lost the Raiders, but it's like they do have a team, right?
Yes.
So you start looking where there's people and across the East Coast, and most of those cities, the big cities, have teams.
Yeah,
there isn't one.
A little bit of talk of Dallas having a second team, which I think would be a huge mistake. And then teams like peripheral teams like Portland or peripheral kind of cities where it kind of just notched down cities. I guess you could kind of start looking at.
Portland is a bigger market than San Diego, so I could see that. Also, Portland is a Seahawks city.
Yes.
This has a very strong fan base for an NFL team.
Yes.
And
yes,
so
I agree.
It would be hard to bring in another team and ask all these fans to change loyalties.
I think if Portland was awarded a Major League Baseball team, I think it would be easier for them.
That would be, well, yeah. I mean, that would be ideal. Portland needs a baseball team. They deserve a baseball team. If nothing else, you need to save the entire Oregon region from the disaster that is the Seattle Mariners franchise.
Well, I'm just thinking too on the rivalry thing. When the Blazers and the Sonics were going, whether you're a Blazer fan or you're a Sonic fan or whatever, that rivalry was actually pretty cool. It was fun to have a team that you hated 150 miles away. And I think that would be fun again. that and
Yeah.
supercharged for football. I mean, that would be
Oh,
like Cleveland and Cincinnati or
it's
Cleveland and
crazy
Pittsburgh. That
in
would be how
soccer,
close those would be.
right? The Sounders versus
The Timbers,
the
yeah.
Timbers is just a crazy strong rivalry in a league that doesn't have the biggest fan base in a lot of cities, but it's passionate up here.
Yeah.
And so that would be cool. I'm gonna pick a question. I'm gonna pick one of my questions that's similar in nature, just because you brought up the Trailblazers, and I know that you are slightly a Trailblazer fan, even though you don't follow them that closely.
Not anymore. Not for the
Are
last few years.
Are they going to be as bad this year as they were last year?
No.
Or have the recent changes
No.
they made actually been improved?
They're not done yet. So the free agency needs to happen still. And so that's coming up here in a week or two. Basically last year, what happened is Damian got injured. Nurkic got hurt, and they decided to tank for draft pick. And so the whole last 6 weeks of the season was just completely crap. And they ended up with the 7th pick in the draft. They drafted a kid that hadn't played a single bounce of the ball in college. He'd signed up for like Kentucky for like, and he was out a few practices, and then he decided to declare for the draft. I think he's going to be good. And so they're kind of in rebuild mode, but it's really kind of weird in the NBA because their rebuild mode is going to be quick, and we're talking like this off season, and they will be probably in a playoff team this year, believe it or not. And they could end up being, depending on what they do in free agency, they need to re-sign Nurkic and they need to re-sign Ant. And if they do those two things, they're going to have a chance if they can find a small forward. And who just decided he wanted to be traded today from the Brooklyn Nets? Kevin Durant. So if they can go out and get Kevin Durant, give him a contract, and
any team with Kevin Durant becomes a title contender.
Yeah, he wants to be traded now. That's the Portland would have to give up some assets and some future firsts to get him. But if that could happen, they've got a really nice starting 5 and a couple of pieces to come in. So they probably got 8 players, 9 players deep right now. If the Durant thing comes through, otherwise they're gonna have to go find a small forward in free agency, and I think they can do it, but they're pretty close.
See, for someone who hasn't followed them closely for a few years, that was a very complete answer.
But I kind of followed them this offseason because I found that situation. I find the rebuilding process, and this too, because of the way that we approach the Seahawks offseason. I almost appreciate the off seasons with some of these clubs more than I do the actual in-season stuff. Now with the Seahawks, I enjoy both, but like for the Blazers, they were unwatchable last year. I didn't watch a lot of games, but I really followed them this offseason because I knew that they would have a chance. So I followed the draft, and then now I've kind of been following the build up to free agency and just to see what they do. They have a new GM that was first named interim GM, and then now they've got he earned the job, and so far so good. So far, he had a good draft, and he had a good trade. I can't remember the player, but they got a power forward that came in. That they really like
from Detroit, and they paid nothing for him.
Right, like a future first or whatever.
Yeah, in 2025 or something.
2025 first, yeah, something like that.
So
yeah,
I don't follow basketball, and I knew that simply because I live in the area and it's on sports radio, and so I hear them talk about the Blazers all the time, and I'm like, I don't know anything about basketball, and especially that team.
Okay, so we need to pour our third beer. We'll never get to it. So let's do that.
So what are you pouring?
Well, I did have a frosted glass, and now it's kind of frosted. I am reaching for my prized possession, which I haven't had for about 12 or 13 years, which is a Smith Wicks Irish Red Ale. And this is the most consumed ale in Ireland. It's brewed in Ireland. It's brewed in Kilkenny. Founded in 1710, now owned by Guinness, of course. I'm going to read the notes as I pour this. So this is the label. It's a popular beer, but I haven't had it for a while, and it's hard to find in the United States. I'm going to read the notes here really quick. Smithwick's a clear beer with a rich ruby color and a creamy head, clean and delicate aroma with different individual notes. From the top fermentation by the Smithwick yeast come aromatic esters, creating a fruity aroma. The aroma hops add late in the boil contribute clean and fresh floral notes. Ale malt contributes aroma hints of biscuit and caramel, refreshing and clean taste with a gentle balance of bitterness from the hops added early in the boil, sweet malty notes from the ale malt, and hints of roast coffee from the roasted barley. That's directly from the website. And it's kind of an in-betweener. A little bit, it's caramely, basically.
Yep. So this is the darkest of my three. It looks, I advertise another non-sponsor brewery there for a second. It looks darker, but when I hold it up to the light, it's red. This isn't a porter. This is a Scotch ale. It is called the Magnificent. And it is from the closest thing I would have to a hometown brewery from where I grew up. Silver City Brewing, named after Silverdale, because that's where their pub house is. Officially, their company is in Bremerton, but they started in Silverdale. That's why they're Silver City. And this is their basically the imperial version of their Scotch ale. It is 9.2%. Its IBUs are at 30, so it's not particularly bitter. Interestingly, they've added black malt to this, which is why it's so dark, but it takes so little to change the color that you don't necessarily have to add a lot in order to change the flavor. So they've intentionally made this darker for reasons I'm not sure.
So how does it taste to you?
Okay. So it has a lot of that malted sugar taste that you get from the mash. And the hops coming through are really light. It's almost got a sweetness to it. I mean, it does have a sweetness to it. And it's real smooth. It's real nice. It's balanced. You wouldn't know this is 9.2%. This tastes like I'm drinking something in the 5s or 6s.
Interesting. Yeah, the one that I just poured is my lowest alcohol by volume, and it is 4.5, which is a light beer. It's got 120 calories, but look at it's full body. It's got this magnificent Irish ale taste with not the heaviness, and it's just it's right up my alley. Because I used to be a guy that used to really like the heavy double ales, whatever you call them, Keith. I'm not a beer person. Imperial ales and so forth, and a little bit more bitter and all that kind of stuff. And I just can't do those anymore. And so this is kind of my wheelhouse right here. This Irish ale, and the first one I had, the India Red Ale, I really liked. Probably my favorite so far.
Yeah, you went really red on the red/ambers. There's some
and honestly, the reason that I did is that I went to this particular beer only store, and this is all they had. I ran out of time when I was out doing my errand yesterday, and literally grabbed the 3 that I could get. Yeah, I was going to go to Total Wine. I didn't have time. It was a little further away, and so I stopped at the local little market, and this is what they had. That's not bad. I mean, these aren't bad at all. Like I would buy these again. Yeah.
Yeah. I went to, cause I go to same places here and there, and I didn't have time to get all the way down to Belmont Station in Portland, which if you live in the Portland area and you don't know Belmont Station, you need to look it up, because it is a very large beer only store that brings in every obscure small batch beer from all over the world.
It
It's
reminds me
fantastic.
of what used to be the Terwilliger Market. You're probably familiar with that. The Terwilliger Market up on the top of the hill as you went Macadam and then took Terwilliger up the hill. At the top of that, they used to have this beer store that used to just have this big, huge walk-in cooler that was probably, I don't know, 2,500 square feet, and it was just loaded, completely loaded. I don't even know how they kept stuff up to date and knew if things expired or whatever, but it was pretty amazing. So anyway, Belmont
But yeah,
Station.
I didn't get down to Belmont because I didn't have time this week. So I went into Bevmo, which is like Total Wine, and their selection was crap. I mean, if we were doing IPAs again this year, I could have had my choice of a million, but anything else, they just didn't have anything, and I was very
Interesting.
disappointed.
Interesting. Okay, I got a question for you.
Okay.
What current player on both offense and defense will have a career year in 2022?
Career year in 2022. Um, God, my brain's going a lot of different directions with that question. I want to say Rashad Penny on offense.
I want to say Rashad Penny too. I do. I
I
really do.
completely believe myself as I say that, but I'm going to say that. And on defense, I want to say Sidney Jones as a breakout player having a career year because he hasn't had much of a career.
Yeah, those are
Um,
very interesting choices, Keith. Not where I thought you would go.
like Brooks would have been like a kind of a natural
He
choice
had
on
a career
defense.
year last year,
But he had
though.
a career year last year, and
Yeah.
are you gonna to beat breaking Bobby Wagner's
Yeah.
record?
Are you going to top 190 tackles? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have thought that you may have gone with like a player like Drew Lock because he's got the opportunity sitting right in front of him. All he has to do is go and take it. It's sitting there. Like he can have a career year. It's waiting. It's like, here you go.
I don't believe in
So
him.
that would be interesting. And on the other side, I was thinking Darrell Taylor, just because he's so primed. He's like primed, and this 3-4 defense is perfectly suited for him.
Actually,
Perfectly suited.
another player in defense that would have been a great answer to that I didn't think of until right now would have been Cody Barton. Guy has been mostly a special teamer,
but
only
he's
played a
going to
little
take
bit
plays
here
off
and
though.
there, and he is going to be starting.
How much nickel are they going to run?
Inside linebacker.
And is he on the field for that?
If it's nickel, yeah, he's got to be on the field. He's your second cover linebacker.
Yeah,
He's your best coverage linebacker on the team. So he will be on the field for that. He'll come off for dime.
Yeah, Uchenna Nwasu is. Cody's going to get that nod to cover people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting.
It's not going to be Darrell Taylor or Nwasu. So,
and they may end up putting a third safety in there for a lot of that,
especially if Blair's healthy.
Yeah, and you know what? And if Adams is healthy, Adams probably get the nod on that.
It's hard for Adams to get the words career year when he's already been a first team All Pro.
True. Yeah.
Even though he hasn't shown it.
We've digressed. Who else?
He hasn't shown it much.
Who else on the offensive side of the ball could have a career year with the quarterback play that we're going to have? Rashad, you said Rashad Penny. I think that's a great choice in this offense if he's healthy. That would be the first choice, I think, for me.
Another guy would be someone like Travis Homer. Because this offense is not going to be able to throw the ball down the field. They're not going to, everything is going to be a dink and dunk. And so you're going to have an opportunity for a running back who's good out of the backfield to get a lot of catches. way more than they've gotten in the past few years.
Yeah, except I think Ken Walker's going to get those snaps, but we'll see.
No, I agree. I'm just thinking, but it's hard for a rookie to have a career year. They
you know
have
who
no
could have a
right?
career year? Will Disley.
Actually, he was one of the names that I considered before I decided to go with Penny. And just
You want to say Noah Fant, but Will Disley could, all he needs is 50 receptions. All he needs.
All he needs
But
is
50 receptions
40
with
receptions.
50
40
receptions
would be a career year
yeah,
for him.
well, where they want to go with the ball this year, and the fact that they're building in Noah Fant into this thing makes Disley just on the coattails of that having opportunities. And we'll see, because they're going to run a lot of two tight end sets, Keith.
Oh, they should.
They're going to run a lot of 12 personnel. So we'll see. How about on defense? Besides Sidney Jones, which I think is a great choice. You can't pick a rookie because,
yeah. And the other one was Cody Barton.
The undervalued guy that nobody is talking about right now is Artie Burns. Now I heard, gosh darn it, forgot his name. Beat writer, Seahawks, Sports Illustrated. It's on our show last. Corbin Smith. I heard Corbin Smith say that he had a quote from one of the defensive backs coach, I think it was Carl Scott, say that Artie Burns is the guy so far in the defensive backfield that is showing up every day in practice and really setting himself apart. And if that's true, and he really has the confidence of the coaching staff coming from Chicago, especially Sean Desai, he could end up playing. He could end up starting. He's got starting experience. He's a first round draft pick in the past.
Yeah.
He's a press cover corner. It'd be interesting if he could start. He could end up having a career year, especially with the safeties that we've got. You take a look at Quandre Diggs being back there in back of him, gives him a lot of opportunity to be aggressive as a corner. And I just think maybe that would be a guy.
Yeah. See, I have a hard time with he's the best guy. And oh my God, I can't believe he's showing up this well when it comes to cornerbacks, because the last year, the player we heard about during this stretch was Ahkello Witherspoon, who didn't make the roster. They traded him after training camp.
What's really interesting, Keith, is both those Colorado cornerbacks didn't work out for the Seahawks. We had Tedrick Thompson, and Ahkello Witherspoon out of the same draft class, out of the same school. They both, they set Pac-10 records, Pac-12 records for interceptions or whatever, and coverage and all that kind of stuff. And they ended up washing out essentially. I mean, Witherspoon's still hanging around, but he's not that good.
He went to Pittsburgh and did well
Pittsburgh. He did well. I mean, it's a different scheme. Didn't have to do the kick step, but he fought that tooth and nail. Like it was nobody's business. Like he wasn't going to do what they were asking him to do. And he wasn't aggressive and physical, and it didn't work for Pete. It just didn't.
Yeah. But he was good before coming to Seattle, just injured a lot, and he was good for Pittsburgh last year. But it wasn't a scheme fit. It wasn't a situation that it was good for him. And Tedrick Thompson was just terrible. Just terrible.
And they hung with him.
Way too long.
Way too long.
Way too long.
I got another question queued up. Do you have one?
Go for it. Because I'm getting my list back up. Okay. Go for it.
Who is the next player to be inducted into the Ring of Honor? And you've got a few to choose from.
KJ Wright.
Wow.
Here's why I say that.
Wow.
Only because
I love it, but wow.
Oh, the reason why I say that is because Actually, that was probably the wrong answer. The right answer is going to be Cam Chancellor. I was thinking Bobby Wagner, but he's still playing, and they're not going to do that for a player that's currently.
I have a question for you
in the NFL. So I went to KJ, but Cam is probably the better answer.
Do the Seahawks, and I don't know this, but do the Seahawks have a criteria? It's similar to the Hall of Fame where you have to be out of the league 5 years in order to get up there.
No.
KJ Wright's an interesting name because you and I have talked about, and everyone knows this. Everyone talks about this, that he's the most underrated player in Seahawks history, essentially. I'm not exactly sure if that's true. He was definitely great, and when you play in the same city for 10 years, you're gonna be part of this conversation. But what about Sherman? What about Thomas? Regardless of his off-field crap.
I think Sherman and Thomas, because of the fact that they left Seattle and they left Seattle
in their prime, kind of
not under the best terms.
Yeah. You're gonna have to have a regime change, maybe.
Well, or there needs to be that reconciliation between team and player that hasn't happened yet, and with Earl Thomas isn't going to happen. Too. Yeah. And so I don't think it's going to be one of those. I think it's going to be Cam Chancellor. KJ Wright was there. The other name that came to mind would be Marshawn Lynch.
Yes, of course.
Absolutely deserving.
How about Mike Holmgren?
Mike Holmgren was inducted last year. He was inducted last year.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I mentioned Marshawn Lynch. So here's the one. Marshawn Lynch has asked for you to pick out a drink for him. What do you serve him?
Wow. Yeah, I'm just not that person, Keith. What's the name for just a whiskey and an ice, like just a straight
just whiskey on the rocks?
Whiskey, yeah, that's probably it. That's what comes to mind first.
Yeah, I remember during the Super Bowl parade, he stole a bottle from someone in the crowd of whiskey and was just drinking out of it and then gave it back. And
yeah, I was thinking like James. See, I'm going to Ireland here in a few days. I was thinking Jameson. Just hand him a bottle of Jameson and put it on the rocks and call it good. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, I would say some good bottle of scotch and I would serve it neat. I wouldn't put it on the rocks because that's how you're supposed to serve
there you
whiskey.
Go. Yeah. But okay. Well, see, I don't even know that much. I am such not a straight alcohol person. I have no idea. Now beer, peripheral. You're like way more knowledgeable. I can do wine a little bit. Maybe we should have a wine show someday. If I can talk you into it, maybe we can pivot. And next year would be, red wine, which would be kind of fun.
And
you're staring blankly.
I know
right now.
Nothing.
Deer
about wine.
and headlights, Keith, right over here.
Nothing. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna walk in. I'm gonna pick. I'm gonna pick wines entirely because I like the picture on the label. That is how little I know about wine.
and a lot of them don't have pictures, Keith. I'm sorry to tell you.
That's
some of them do though. Some of them do.
Okay, I've got some quick questions for you that we'll call them rapid fire. What's your favorite holiday?
Rapid fire, my favorite holiday. I do like the 4th of July.
Okay, what's your go-to beverage in a stadium?
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be alcoholic.
Well, it in a stadium, that's kind of a special occasion, and I'm usually there for a couple hours, so I definitely would go with probably a beer. And it's usually an ale of some sort, whatever's flowing on tap there. Light ale, heavy ale, Scotch ale, amber. Yeah.
What's your favorite in-stadium food item?
Probably one of those really nice, big, huge pretzels with a little bit of mustard. I like that.
So you can tell I'm from Seattle because for me it's Ivar's clam chowder.
I do like Ivar's,
which I wouldn't get at any. I wouldn't get anything fish or chowder at any other stadium except for in Seattle. But
I
Ivers, I will
miss
do.
the fish and chips.
Oh
Ivers.
yeah.
I do with the tartar sauce. That tartar sauce is something magical in that tartar sauce, and I don't know what it is, but I sure like that stuff.
Probably crack because it's way too good.
My favorite new word is crack. So not crack the way that Americans think about it, but in Ireland, they call having a good time crack. Yeah.
Good to know. I didn't know that.
I'll be saying that a lot this next week.
What is your favorite kind of cheese?
The kind that doesn't exist.
Not a cheese person. Interesting.
I like here's my answer. I like melted cheese. I like cheese on pizza and anything else, nachos, all that kind of stuff, except for that queso stuff. I'm not really a huge queso person, but like cheddar jack and that stuff. Now the brie stuff and anything like Munster and blue cheese, anything that's stinky or is weird, just leave me alone, please. Just don't even ask me. Don't bring it near me. Don't make me smell it. Don't ask me if I want any. I do not. Yeah. And now I've come a long way since I was a child, because as a child, my mom would make me sit at the table, and a lot of people my age have this experience. Maybe you made the cutoff, Keith, where you weren't subjected to this, but my mom was one of those moms that made you sit at the table and finish everything that was in front of you before you could get down, even if it meant throwing
I'm not
up.
young enough. I'm not young enough to miss out on that. No.
So yes, I experienced that a few times, and she's got me a few times. But since then, I think I was 16 or so, and I was on a double date after a football game, and we went to the local pizza place, and I think it was in Kent, Washington. And went to the local pizza place. It wasn't Shakey's. It was like Giovanni's Pizza. And I had a Canadian bacon pineapple pizza. I know, pineapple. But
we've had that conversation.
There was cheese on it. There was cheese on it. And I had to conform to the group situation. And that was the first time I had pizza that I liked. And ever since then, I've been able to eat cheese, only it has to be melted, warmed up, heated.
Interesting.
Cold cheese to me is toxic.
Okay. And I asked my wife,
sorry,
what question I should ask you. What does she want to know? And she said, "What's your middle name?"
Wow. My official name is William Patrick. So I am a Patrick. I am a little Irish, and I'm going to Ireland. So
William Patrick. That is a very Irish name.
Yeah. And then Alvstad is completely Norwegian. So I'm a mutt. There's no question about it. Okay, so prediction for you. June prediction. What's your starting quarterback week 1 for the Seattle Seahawks?
Geno Smith.
Prediction. Wins or losses in 2022?
5-12.
Seahawks listeners, mark that down because it's wrong.
I was going to say that about your cheese take, but I chose not
to. What's your favorite position group in the NFL?
Favorite position group?
And we all know it's going to be on the offensive line, but which offensive line position is it?
Left tackle.
Why? I thought you were going to say defensive tackle and bring up Cortez Kennedy.
No, you just said favorite position group in the NFL, not player or anything.
Well, I mean defensive tackle. I meant defensive. I thought you were going to say defensive tackle.
But no, offensive tackle, left tackle specifically, Walter Jones, and then there was all of his contemporaries. There was a group of tackles that were in the league the same time as Walter Jones.
Yeah, Ogden. Was
Um,
his closest competitor, right?
yeah, and Tony Baselli until he had the hip injury. Um, and then there's another one whose name I'm blanking on there for a second. Um, there's like four of them that were all playing at the same time. Three of them in Walter, and honestly, they're the best four tackles that have ever played the game. And the
And
fact
he
that they
was the
all,
best of them,
yeah, they
Walter.
all played it. They all played at the same time, and they're the best ever. And we don't have anyone in the league at all that's close to any of them.
Walter Jones was just a crazy, like the stats on him, and I don't have them in front of me, and maybe you know some of them by memory, but pressures allowed and sacks given over the course of his 12 or 13 years in the league was just absurd.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's some tackles that give that up in 1 year that are starters in the NFL right now.
No, there's starters that give that up in one game.
Yeah, right. And penalties, like holding penalties, like all
Yeah.
of it, like
So,
the fewest ever,
mm-hmm.
the end.
Yeah,
Right.
he had like 3 holding penalties in his entire career. 2 of them came in his last season. I think
Jermaine
it was
Ifedi, hello, where are you?
I think it was 4 sacks given up in his entire career. 3 of them came in his
4
final season.
sacks. So we all think that, Dwayne Brown is all that and a bag of chips and we love him and he's been awesome. Dude, he gave that up last year in like 7 games.
Yeah. But with Walter Jones, he gave up 3 sacks in his final year, 2 of them in 1 game against Dallas. And that was the point where you knew his knee was gone and he was done. Because when Walter Jones is giving up 2 sacks in a game, when he doesn't give up 2 sacks in a season,
Do you know who the player was or players? Do you remember
no,
those?
it was one player, and I don't remember who it is.
Was it where? Was he still playing?
You know what? I think that's who it was.
As a young player, that would
Mhm.
just be impossible to block that dude too, right?
Yep. For Walter Jones in his prime, he would have blocked him. He would have shut him out. But he got beat twice in the same game for sacks, and you knew at that point that his knee was shot and he was
Interesting.
done.
Interesting.
And that was when he retired. And
I got one more question for you.
Go for it.
Actually, I got 2 more. But in line with memories, what's your favorite Seahawks memory, like of all time, like growing up or last year or whatever?
Wow. My favorite. That's a hard one. Just because there's been so many good ones. My favorite memories, I can't think of a specific play, but from 1984 when the ground chuck offense got scrapped for air chuck for 1 year because Kurt Warner blew out his knee and they didn't really have a backup. And so in order to make an offense work, they had to throw it. And they threw it all over the place and set franchise records that took a long time to fall. They took it to the Matt Hasselbeck era before they were challenged. I remember watching those games and not having any idea what was really going on, only that it was exciting and fun. And that's when I became a Seahawk fan. So that's probably my favorite, was just from that. As far as individual plays, that Sean Alexander run I mentioned earlier when I was in the stadium in Tempe, was just fantastic. The Beast Quake, and then, obviously the Super Bowl win.
Yeah.
And there's
You
so
and I
many
are so
different,
similar in that respect.
points in that Super Bowl win that you could name any of them.
Yeah. Occasionally, if it's on the NFL channel, I'll watch moments and bits of it. I haven't watched the entire game in its entirety, start to finish. I do have the DVD. I ordered one of those, made sure I had that. But yeah, crazy. Yeah, I think my favorite overall memory, when I really think about it, is going to the NFC Championship game against the Panthers in 2005 with my dad. and we hadn't been to a game together for 15, 16 years at that point. And to get back there with him, and he hadn't been to a game for 16 years. And to get there with him in that special moment in franchise history, winning the game that sent you to your first Super Bowl was magical. Like, I'll never forget that. That was outstanding.
Yeah.
Because it was the first. It was just one of those games where we
what I
exceeded
remember,
expectations.
You know what I remember most about that game? Is that, I mean, Steve Smith was the receiver for Carolina that was just ate the entire league up.
Yeah, in fact, I just watched a play from him that season. Just this morning, happened to come on my phone. Crazy.
I mean, he just crazy talent and whatever. And I don't think people outside of, that market really appreciate how good he was. But he came in, and Seattle didn't really have a lot of great they didn't have great cornerback play or whatever that year. They were on their third safety.
Was it Marcus Trufant or something like that back there?
I don't think Trufant. Well, maybe Trufant was playing, but at the back end they had Ken Hamlin, who
Wilson was a corner or something.
Yeah, Ken Hamlin had taken a stop sign to the brain, and was on injured reserve, and then somebody else got hurt. So they were like on their third safety, and you have this guy that just has been eating up secondaries all year. And Mike Holmgren's answer to this was to take a linebacker, Leroy Hill, and put him out wide on Smith. And his job was to just jam him and manhandle him and then let him go. And then I think maybe Trufant or whoever was the cornerback would pick him up at that point. And
disrupted the entire timing.
Yep, just get out there and just crush him at the start of every play and make him earn it. And it shut him down. Just completely.
And they had completely game planned. I'm talking about the Jaguars, not Jaguars, but Panthers to completely, throw to Smith like 15 times in the game.
Yeah.
And so that completely ruined their game plan. Like Jake Delhomme couldn't figure it out. He couldn't figure it out. And we had just enough juice up front to get to him and disrupt all that stuff. And we totally shut him down.
Yeah.
Like we could have shut that team down, but completely shut out.
It was the weirdest coaching move that I'd seen, to take this awesome little super fast, shifty wide receiver and to stick a linebacker on him, make him the linebacker lineup outside on him. And it worked so well. And I just remember thinking, I'm like, that is innovative coaching. That is coaching as it's meant to happen.
Yeah. Leroy Hill was so underrated too.
Oh, absolutely.
I loved Leroy Hill when he was playing. Fun.
I liked him on the field. He had some off-field baggage, but on the field, he was a good player.
Who's the player, to the best of your memory, that let you down the most in Seahawks history? And if you don't have an answer, I've got an answer.
I don't want to think of one. Go ahead and give me yours.
Corin Robinson.
Oh,
number 9 overall pick in the draft. Was all that and a bag of chips. Came in, had some alcohol.
That's such a good answer for that.
Came in, had some alcohol problems. Never developed. Completely washed out on his own team before he washed out in the NFL. Just so much upside and promise, and just had serious off-field problems and let me down. I mean, let the whole franchise down. They were counting on him. When you pick somebody at 9, and we just picked a player at 9, if that happened to Charles Cross, that would be the equivalent of what happened with that player.
Another answer for that would be Dan McGuire. First round draft pick quarterback. Could not get on the field. Even in the 2-14 season, where the offense was doing absolutely nothing, averaging like 140 yards a game total. They ran him out there for a couple of games, and then we're like, nah.
So what was the
Bring
player?
Stan Gelbaugh back.
What was the player for the Oakland Raiders? The quarterback, just so people have kind of a reference of a contemporary quarterback that had the same sort of situation. I can't remember his name.
Jamarcus Russell. He was a first overall pick in the draft. Man, he ate his way out of the league. He got up to like 330
crazy.
pounds. And
did he really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked enough about the bad aspects of the NFL.
Okay. I want to kind of follow all that up. Who is your favorite team to root for in the NFL that's not Seattle? Like, who do you find yourself rooting for as long as they're not playing the Seahawks?
That's a great question. I probably have two, and it's probably the Ohio team, Cincinnati and Cleveland. Cleveland, because they took the franchise away. Well, before that, before I was a Seahawks fan, I kind of liked the Browns and the Vikings, and after they took the franchise away and sent it to Baltimore, and the Browns fans, I mean, some of the best rabid fans in the entire planet had their team taken away. It's Seahawks, the Sonics fans can identify with this, because this is how you felt. This is now a football franchise that happened, and when they got it back, they were just bad, and they had to, petition the NFL to get all their records back and all that stuff, which was complete BS. And so I've been kind of following them a little bit, and so when you and I have talked about their roster over the last 10 years or whatever, about being pretty good and they're getting better and stuff, that's where that comes from. It's like, I kind of follow them a little bit. I kind of like the roster. I like the process. I always thought they'd be better than they actually ended up being. And it's still true to this day. And then the Cincinnati, just, since Bernie Kosar and what's the receiver? He's on Monday Night Football now, or was on Sunday Night Football, I think. Can't remember his name, but anyway, he was the receiver there, and Collinsworth, and like that team, and Icky Woods doing the Icky Woods dance
and the Icky Shuffle.
Yeah, the Icky Shuffle. So those are kind of fun teams, but I'm kind of an underdog guy. I like the underdog teams, so every year I kind of look at around and kind of see who's struggling a little bit. Minnesota's always got a little piece, just because my dad and I, before the Seahawks became a team, I really liked Fran Tarkenton. I was a left-handed kid growing up, and Fran Tarkenton was my hero as far as being a quarterback, and the way that he scrambled around and made plays, and just had this little moxie about him. So I kind of dug that. How about you?
So we do all this stuff with roster building and off-season stuff. The teams that I root for are the teams that have been expansion teams during my fandom. Cleveland a little bit, but less so than Jacksonville and Houston.
Well, Houston had their franchise taken away at one point too.
I know, they became the Tennessee Titans.
Remember Earl Campbell, Keith?
Oh, everybody remembers Earl Campbell.
Earl Campbell had thighs as wide as my torso. Like, it was unreal. Yeah. Like tree trunks. Like, and that guy came like down the field and trucked you. You knew about it for like 3 or 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy. Like that Cam Chancellor hit on whatchamacallit?
Vernon
Davis. Yeah, that was Earl Campbell coming at you.
That was Earl Campbell on every run.
That was Earl Campbell on every run.
Yeah. And not only that, with Houston and the Oilers, I mean, think about that was Warren Moon finally coming back from Canada because he couldn't get a job in the U.S.
Warren Moon's family used to have season tickets right in front of us in the Kingdom.
Yep. And then
so I met Warren Moon when I was a kid, but he'd never remember me.
But yeah, they had their franchise taken from them. They got it back as the Texans. No more Oilers. And they've been up and down, and they've done some things that have been weird and all of that. But they're a team that I want to see do well. Same with Jacksonville. I want those teams to do well. They always disappoint me.
Have they ever gotten close to the Super Bowl?
Jacksonville did. They got to an AFC title game and lost to the Patriots. But then their defense went from being super elite to awful because the players just.
And Blaine Gabbert was there. Yeah.
He was. Yep. And Houston had a run of years. And that ended. Seahawks ended that. I'm
trying to talking about with Deshaun Watson?
No, this is before that.
Going way back. Okay.
This was before that. Before Deshaun Watson, and specifically, Richard Sherman ended their run. I'm trying to think of the name of the quarterback, but it's eluding me. But the Seahawks.
Yeah. Where Richard Sherman's shoe came off on the interception, he ran it back for a touchdown.
The Seahawks, Houston had dominated most of that game. They just couldn't.
That was Richard Sherman's rookie year too, right?
It was his second year. But yeah, and the Houston had dominated that game, and the Seahawks just couldn't get stuff going on offense, and they kept making plays at the last possible second to keep Houston out of the end zone and keep the team in there. And then Richard Sherman intercepts that pass, runs it in for a touchdown, loses his shoe. Wilson gets the ball back, a couple minutes later, and leads them on a drive, and the Seahawks win. And that became kind of the jumping off point for the run that the Seahawks had. But after that quarterback was an interception machine. After being a guy that had taken care of the football, and that's why he had managed, this team had done well. They hadn't gotten to a Super Bowl, but they'd gone deep in the playoffs multiple years in a row. Great roster. And then all of a sudden, he couldn't throw a pass to his own team.
Wow. And I can't remember the quarterback either, Keith.
They just broke him. And it was that game. It was the Richard Sherman game that broke him. But yeah, so they've had their runs. But for the most part, those teams have just always been bad. And it's been disappointing, but it's still fun because, these are the teams picking at the top of the draft. So, the draft scout in me gets to okay, what would I do if I was them? And how would I take that trash roster and turn it around and a lot of that. So I do like those teams.
Do you like the way the Seahawks are building their roster?
I like the way they're building it now.
Do you think it was smart the way that they've approached this quarterback thing, given what they feel like they had to do with Russell Wilson?
Well, I mean, you get to the point where the well had been poisoned at some point with Wilson's agent. Re-signing him was going to be impossible, or at least super contentious.
And very costly.
Well, and but he would have been worth the cost, but that's not really the major issue. It's just that it would have been Wilson wanted out. And the team was like, okay, if we were going to leave him, where is his value the highest?
Should we be concerned as fans why he wanted out? Like, we've never really been given the complete story. And I'm not sure that we're going to get that complete story ever, or maybe after Pete Carroll leaves and John Schneider leaves. But it seems like there's a story there that has yet to be told.
Well,
from Russell Wilson's perspective. I think Russell Wilson's too respective as a human being to open up the books on why he left. But there seems to be something there that we haven't yet learned.
Well, I know that when it started was when John Snyder went to see Josh Allen's pro day. and was quoted with all of these praising quotes about how good he was and all of that. And that pissed Russell Wilson off, because they were like, why are you looking at quarterbacks? I'm here. I'm your starter.
Why
And
was he there, Keith?
because he looks at every
Yeah,
quarterback ever
I know.
here.
I know what he says.
No, because he literally does go to
Yeah,
every
but I
quarterback every
know
year.
that that's what is out in the media.
No,
But
it's not just that
why
it's
did
out
he
in the
do that
media,
with Russell Wilson on the roster?
because
Why
he
would
did
you
that the
want
year
to do that?
before. He did that the year after. He's literally, it's
But
not
you're
just what the
saying that
media
that
says.
upset the cart. Why would John Schneider, knowing that it would upset the cart, go ahead and do it anyway?
John Snyder didn't know it would upset the cart because he had gone to every other pro day for a first round quarterback.
Okay, so that's where you think it started. Why
That's
did
it
it
started
end
there
up
because,
ending where it ended?
well, it started there because it got all the press, and it became this thing where John Snyder wanted to move up and get him, and then there was, um, you know, they said it was there. People in Wilson's camp said, we'll say that there was offers and that Seahawks were talking about trading, Russell Wilson for the first overall pick with Cleveland to go draft Josh Allen. But that was more of a Cleveland being like, sure, we'll give you the pick for us. Yeah, why wouldn't we? But the Seahawks never did anything with that. But you have him there. Then you have this potential trade rumor, and then you've got an agent who doesn't know the NFL, who is a baseball agent.
I think that's a
who
big
who's
story.
who's coming in and creating controversy and drama when it wasn't necessary. And ultimately, you have the situation where it became an issue over time. And Wilson was just done. He was like, I don't want to deal with taking the blame for all the sacks, and that watching the team go in a
Do
direction
you
that
think that
he
he
wasn't.
had legitimate concerns that went unaddressed, or do you think there's a maturity issue there with Russell Wilson
I think he had
at all?
legitimate issues that went that went unaddressed.
How
Look
does
at
that skew your lens view of John Schneider and Pete Carroll as far as legacy?
it doesn't, because for them it's prioritizing. And you've got one of the most, when he was younger, one of the most elusive quarterbacks in NFL history. So they leaned on that a little bit, didn't pay their offensive line so they could pay their defense. That doesn't mean that
That's very true.
it doesn't mean that Russ didn't have a gripe about how bad the offensive line got. But you got to make priorities. And when you've got an asset like Wilson, okay, you can skip a little on the offensive line. I think they skipped too far. George Fent being the starting left tackle that one year shows you how far they'd taken it too far. And I don't remember his name, but the defensive tackle that Tom Cable had starting at center for half a season.
Nowak?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, that should have gotten Tom Cable fired that instant. And honestly, he shouldn't be in the NFL. That should have been so dumb that should have ended his career.
Drew Nowak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how, I mean, the Seahawks cut him.
Yeah, but that was 5 years ago. So
yeah.
Here we are today, and he wanted out. So, I mean, and he signed up for a new contract since then. So, yeah, those things do add up, but nonetheless, he still signed up.
He did sign up for another new contract after that, but
what happened since
that
then?
was an ugly negotiation for that contract.
And public-ish.
It was an ugly
It could have been a lot uglier. I mean, there's uglier negotiations, let's be honest, but it was ugly.
There's uglier in the public realm. It was ugly privately. And
why did John and Pete sour on Russell Wilson as a player?
They didn't. They didn't sour on him as a player. They soured on all of the stuff with the contracts and just him wanting control over play calling and personnel and things that they didn't think his job is to be quarterback, not to be general manager or offensive coordinator. And he wanted some of that control, and they were like, no, it's like, stay in your lane. They soured on his desire for that. But I don't think they soured on him as a player.
How do you think that Russell Wilson's going to do in Denver?
I think he's going to do well. I think he's got a defense. He's got a running game. He's got some nice young weapons. I think he's going to do all right. I think he's also going to show you that the limitations that we saw in Seattle weren't just Seattle.
True.
He's not going to throw the ball over the middle well. He's not going to hit his tight ends well.
He's sure got
he's going to take really, extra sacks.
He's got a competent head coach who used to be the offensive coordinator for an offense that he desired to be a part of. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to go to Green Bay, but he wanted to have that sort of offense. And it'll be interesting. I think that you're right. I think he's successful. I think in fact, he'll turn it into a motivating factor to make sure that he has a successful year. I'm just not sure exactly how successful Denver is going to be overall. That'll be the interesting part of it, is if he can push those guys over the finish line in the same way that he pushed the 2013 Seahawks over the finish line, and have one of those years. That'll be interesting. If he has a 9-win season though, like there's going to be some serious pressure going on, and that he hasn't felt before.
What's going to happen as far as Wilson in Seattle though, is that a couple of years will go by. He's going to do what he's going to do. Seattle's going to do what they're going to do. And eventually all of the parties will make up, and he's going to go out of the NFL being on great terms with Seattle, and will be a Ring of Honor member.
And a Hall of Famer.
And probably, Hall of Famer, end up with his number retired in Seattle. All of the stuff that we were talking about, it won't matter.
No.
I mean, it's kind of like Peyton Manning and Indianapolis.
Do Pete and Russell Wilson, are they still connected? And do they go to the Hall of Fame together? Do they go to the Ring of Honor together? I mean, most quarterbacks and head coaches that have been married as long as Russ and Pete, they tend to kind of stay together, even after it's all said and done.
I could see Pete Carroll being the one asked to do the introduction of Russell Wilson into the Hall of Fame.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Although I don't know who's really close to Pete that would do that honor, but Russell Wilson would do that really well.
I would say that I could see Cam Chancellor or Bobby Wagner introducing Pete Carroll. Because remember, he's a defensive head coach first. He's a defensive coordinator before he became a head coach. So I tend to think that he is closer with the defensive stars.
I just think of Russ and Pete as being father and son. I mean, in a way. Yeah. Interesting. You got anything else?
I don't. And we're at almost 2 hours, and I've consumed way too much beer for this time of day. I think we should call this a show.
Fun show.
Always.
Fun show. I like the back half too, to where we started talking about just stuff off script, and that's always fun. Cool. So I'll see you. I'm out of here for a while.
I know. Off to Ireland and then Spain.
Ireland and Spain. How about that? Who would have thunk it? So I'm gonna have a great time.
I'm gonna be here.
By the time we release this show, which I'll fully admit we're putting in the can, I'm going to release it. It's probably going to go out when I'm almost back.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully I had fun. I'll let you know.
Definitely. Keep me updated.
Will do. All right. Follow Keith at Myers NFL. You can follow me at NW Seahawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook. SeahawksPlaybook.com is the website. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform, literally any of them: Spotify, iHeartRadio, any of them. And
please
you can find
subscribe,
us.
you guys. I know it helps you guys because our show shows up automatically on your YouTube feed or on your podcast app, but it helps us. It helps us a lot as far as getting out there and getting more people exposed to us. So please hit the subscribe button.
Yeah. And until next time,
Go Hawks.
go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWSeahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.